yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night.
Every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to That Silverline Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK, and I'm joined, as always, by Cassisi Harris.
Hey.
And David Rios, who is currently muted.
Let's try this again.
There you go.
Hey there.
Currently, Jose is out, not sick, but dealing with family stuff, so hopefully see him next week. For this week, tonight's topic is going to be the impact of manga on Western comics. So we went over points of influence as well as the general business practice after the manga explosion in the West in the late 90s, early 2000s. Been a week, though. I was out sick last week, I believe. So I'll open up to a preamble ramble, if you will. Cassisi, David, was there anything interesting happen to you guys over the past week? Anything that you feel worth exploring or sharing?
No, just day job keeping me really, really busy. End of year, so just pushing hard to close it out the right way. So.
Sure.
Pretty much the same thing with me.
Okay. Yeah. I am in a fairly similar boat. Don't have anything of too much interest popped up, although I did recently pick up a new book by Jim Butcher, the writer of the Dresden Files. I remember. Let me get the name for that. He has a new thing out. Long Past Dues. It's kind of like it's like an urban fantasy detective book, but the character works for the Magic IRS.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's actually really good.
Yeah, I like. Yeah, it's
I like that idea. Yeah.
So it deals with the day job of someone working in the magical world, and like even if the day job is perilous, like what's the paperwork involved with like sanctioning magic in fantasy setting? Yeah. So I haven't gotten through it yet, but I'll go back. But I just thought that it was an interesting concept.
There's another book about a social worker in a similar environment. It's a pretty good book.
Nice. Do you remember the name at all, or who it's by?
It is, I think it's T.J. Klune. Is that? Gosh, The House on the Cerulean Sea. I think that's the name of the book.
Okay. By T.J. Klune? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
One of the kids is the Antichrist. It's pretty interesting. Like the gnome and the Antichrist, and it's pretty funny.
Nice. Okay, I'll give that. Check that out. Very cool. Okay. Getting into tonight's topic, I will open the floor first. So we're going to be talking about the little like points of influence that manga's had on Western comics that have slipped through, and some people know some, other people not, but it's actually I find interesting realm to delve into. So from either of your perspectives, I guess first, what is your level of exposure to manga or anime for both Kasisi and David?
I mean, anime, there are fanatics out there. I will say that I have watched quite a bit of anime. I have not read a lot of manga, but you hear, they're kind of one and the same. So you hear about manga when you watch anime, if that makes any sense. But
yeah.
And you can kind of see the visual influence having seen pages of manga and not really having read it. You can see it in anime. But, I would say I'm still at a low level when it comes to, manga.
Sure.
I'm probably pretty similar. Haven't read a lot of anime. I've read, well, if you want to kind of segment that, to like the manga novels, books like that compared. More of the stuff that I followed was actual comic book, manga comic book type stuff. So your traditional, 24-page, 22-page books. Just some stuff in the past. Like I actually ran across some stuff when I was sorting through some books and all that. Some of the manga books that I had. So from like 30 years ago. So, but yeah, that's and on the flip side, most of my stuff is watching the anime things. I like a lot of the mech stuff, so a lot of the Gundam stuff, the Robotech stuff, the
Macross, Robotech,
yes,
Mesopeda, stuff like that. Sorry, the what is it? The new generation. But yeah, it's a lot of the different ones. Like there was a show that I used to like on way back in the 90s on the fledgling UPN network. The anime was called Techno Man. Yeah, enjoyed that one. So yeah, there's some pretty cool stuff that used to see, and a lot of your old school anime like Battle of the Planets,
Fist of the North.
Oh my what?
Yeah. So. No.
Okay. I already shared being cosplayer, but I am on the other end, very much into the anime manga scene.
Nice.
There's my Gojo Satoru from Jujutsu Kaisen with my friend Christopher and their Naruto cosplay. More fun.
Nice.
So I might be maybe for once I might be the most experienced head on the crowd for this one. But it'll be an interesting topic. So what this might end up turning into is me going over practices and norms in manga that myself or others have noticed have impacted Western comics, and kind of get your guys' opinion on where you might have seen that, or if you have other takes on that, how you feel on that. So we get through some notes pulled up here. Also, I'll take this time. I know there, in general, there's mixed feelings on the market, but if anyone has Comixology Unlimited, there are 400 pages of manga included with that membership. So not only can you get your comics from also indie publishers. Indie publishers are also on Comics Edge Unlimited now, so go ahead and do that. But you can also, if you have not read any manga, you have quite the selection to choose from. There we go. All right. So, pull up some notes here. First thing I have is we're just saying in some context here. Manga in the West is still a fairly recent development. Probably showcased by the fact that we have a 1 in 3 of being familiar with the genre in the room. It didn't really pop off until after anime got ported over in the 80s, and even then a lot of anime was bootlegged. I know a lot of people, their first introduction to anime was the bootleg Gundam DVDs that had incorrect subtitles or voice translations that had a weird French-Canadian accent to them. But manga came over shortly after that, and then sometime around 2010-ish, I feel like it exploded and ended up becoming its own subculture of note. And around that point on is when we start seeing some influence carried over. One thing that manga is particularly well known for is its use of facial expressions, kind of the big eyes, big mouths, showcasing everything.
Well, it's a lot of not just the big expression, but the big eyes and all that, but everything is it's like amped up. All the expressions are amped up like 10, 20 times what they would be. I'm nervous, and it's got the person with the tears rolling down the face, and dots for eyes, and everything's just like going and just crying like crazy and everything because something's embarrassing or something like that. Yeah. So it's another thing that's known for the anime and the manga stuff. You see that way over exaggeration. So
yes. And I think Western comics still do not do that to the same extreme. Something that I've noticed, I feel like, and others have noticed in some of their own critiques, is that the use of panels for single character reactions has increased, as well as putting a lot more lines into a character's face to kind of draw out those expressions. Of course, I have seen a few panels of comics where I actually went through and did the expression marks, like doing the hash on someone's head if they're angry. But the use of taking that panel space to actually create an expression. It's happened before, but I feel like it's definitely increased in frequency and amount of detail drawn to a singular expression since manga has blown up. So I don't know if either of you have really paid attention to how many times the character reacts, but
I have not. That's an interesting observation. Now I have to. I'm gonna start being more sensitive to that, but I have not.
Yeah. So you're saying you need sensitivity training? Sorry,
but just I haven't. In that context, I never thought of that as an influence of manga.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of. It could also just be. Even if it is just like a passive thing changing the subconscious, the timing there, it's probably because you've seen a lot of art or fan art or whatever where people are taking a lot of time to draw character expressions.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you're not consciously thinking about it, it's definitely something I feel like is leaked. And that kind of fits into a broader structure on panel composition and pacing. Whereas in Western comics, it's always been 22 pages, get through, have your cliffhangers every other page. Always have something driving. Manga that's still like, there's still like rules of thumb for having a driven story, but they take more time to pace it out with character interaction being the driving moment. Sometimes if it gets taken too literally, you get filler episodes of anime where it's just people talking back and forth for 30 minutes and then they power up the next episode. But
Dragon Ball Z
yeah,
to watch a fight of that back in the time, you'd have like whole episodes of just faces staring at each other. It's like watching Twilight all over again. People just staring at each other.
Definitely. And I feel like kind of that same vein with using action shots, there's a lot more moments not taken to tell a story that is more character centric and use and tell a slower story almost. In a way that builds up the power scaling of a main character wasn't necessarily there before. I mean, I feel like comics in the 80s and 90s really got into the idea of power scaling. It wasn't just the good guy was the good guy, so they won. They beat the monster of the week every time. But the one thing that manga does really well is it's showcasing the power scaling. You're going to have one character who's supposed to be strong, but they're side characters, so they get absolutely trounced by a villain that then the main character can have an epic battle against.
Yep.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot more, and some people have spoken to that being the influence of stealing power scaling. I think some writers in Marvel have said that they steal the idea of power scaling from things like Naruto or Bleach, stuff that they saw growing up now. In terms of actually creating a range of aptitude and power within a super team.
Gosh, the way that, man, to say that you watch Naruto growing up, it makes me feel so old. Oh my gosh, it has been that long though. It's been a long time.
Yeah, was it? Yeah, Naruto I think was 99, and then Shippuden was 2003, and or something like that. Yeah,
something like that. Yeah,
it's been a while.
Yeah, that's interesting though. Yeah, I guess you're right. Like power scaling wasn't really as big a thing before because the hero was just always the hero, and they had that. I guess. Yeah. It's interesting that they admit that they took that from stuff like. I mean, I shouldn't say took it from. They're just influenced by the power scaling.
I guess that's also the point of this show in general, like tonight, is to say, like, we always talk about how, as a creative, as a writer, as an artist, as a colorist, whatever you are, you're always going to be influenced by the media you take in. And you can rapidly improve the rate at which your own art gets further defined and your own unique take on art gets further defined by how much you willingly engage with art that you want to adapt, how you intentionally receive good influence from other mediums. And it can be something non-traditional, like if you work in Western comics, I've said before, if you write comics, read a long form novel and then read a film script. And, I think also involved in like reading manga. You can also do great wonders if you find something that like is in your genre that you like. You're probably going to find parts in there that you like that's going to influence your own taste and your own voice. I also got a more of a business note too. That's from others before I get into my own stuff. But looking also at the business side of things, a lot of yes, for many who don't know in the Western world, in manga, the mangaka, the creator, is the writer illustrator usually. Sometimes they have teams, but a lot of times, especially in some of the more popular shonen, it is one person. And just about I think there's a few instances where a publisher owns it, but in most cases, the creator owns their property. Like Tite Kubo owns Bleach. I forgot his name now. Oda owns One Piece. And even though these are large, complex universes that if you read Shonen Jump, do sometimes have crossovers and like have a multiverse segment, the creator owns. And I think once that creator owns has been something that comic creators have been, striving for a long time. But I definitely feel like once manga came out, and for a while, manga, I think it might even still be a case where manga is outselling traditional comics.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. And I mean, money talks. So when other companies see the profitability of the manga business, way of doing business, you end up getting some pop-up studios. Like there's a bunch in Portland that were, as direct result, originally they were manga imprinters or manga importers that ended up publishing their own comics later on. Ended up doing that, essentially that same business style where they've been working and essentially importing manga for a while. That when they decided to make their own stuff, they reached out to writers and artists and said, "All right, you guys do your own thing. You own it. We're just going to be publishers of it." So I thought that was kind of an interesting note, as well as the fact that other people have. This is a note given by the Comic Book Pros staff from San Diego Comic-Con.
I'm surprised that they actually own. So the mangakas. So Kishimoto owns the rights to Naruto. Like I
know in some cases that's not. I know in some cases it's not. Like I think for some Shonen owns it, but for others, it isn't entirely creator. That's why when the creator of D. Gray Man had their car accident, that anime just stopped because no one could touch it until they recovered years later. Yeah.
That's impressive.
Right?
Impressive.
But I think also because I don't want to disparage our own industry, but I think in Japan in general there is a greater appreciation for artists and creatives.
Yeah.
And so for business, it'd be in bad taste almost to take the rights away from a creator. Which now looking at how many independently owned things we have here, like Silverline, we own our own properties. It's just Silverline handles publishing distribution for it. And now seeing like I think in the West, it's almost getting to a point where other people are looking at it being in bad taste as well to take a creator's work, unless a creator is working on something that has been around for so long that the original people are not no longer around. Like if you were to work on an old property for DC or Marvel. Yeah, I just thought it was like an interesting business note on it as well, that people who are higher up in the comics industry than me have actually taken time to note that they attribute the rise of some of these more creator-owned studios popping up as a result of manga influencing the comics market itself.
Hey, Pops.
Pops is in the chat. Okay. I do feel kind of bad for David here because manga is notoriously black and white, so we probably won't have any notes on coloring here. But I guess if David has any notes on their own taste in writing or line work or anything like that, that's appreciated.
Well, I did do some inking work when I first started, so
yeah, definitely.
And actually, my first work was in. I have it here. Mega News Watch.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So I did. See if I can find it here. Did a backup. There it is.
Oh, nice.
That's awesome.
So backup feature. There it is, inked by David Rios.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a four-page manga.
Yeah. Man, yeah. Those lines are real clean.
That is very cool.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, one more of that. And then, of course, there's your, expressions and
Right. Yeah.
that we're talking about. So, yeah.
You started the show by saying you didn't have much experience with manga, and you're the only person here who's worked on one.
Right.
Also did, I have this too here, surprisingly. This book.
Oh, yeah.
Eternity Books. There you go.
Nice.
So did some inking in this as well. Not very rough, very, very, very early stuff. So, but yeah.
Nice.
Very nice.
Yep. Played around with it a little bit.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. I guess, well, since we just went over it, in your perspective, inking Western versus manga style, what are some of the differences you've noticed, if there was any, or did you just ink it all the way you're used to? And is there anything you carried over after working on manga?
It's pretty much, I inked it very similar.
Okay.
You just gotta, pay attention to where a lot of the emphasis is with the expression things and making sure that those things pop. But yeah, I didn't have too much. I mean, I did some superhero stuff, some of the manga stuff and whatever, but it was not a whole lot till I transitioned over to color. So
Sure. Okay. That's cool, though. Thanks for sharing that.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I don't know why I happen to have it on the still on my desk. I think it was we had Hank Canals was doing some question and answer stuff for Silverline on Sunday, and so that's why I had the Zillion out, and then we had another topic talking about the anime stuff. So
Nice.
and hold on, I'm looking something up here. One sec. Go ahead and
Okay. Okay. And something here gets more stuff for the writers. We already kind of mentioned the differences in pacing in panel layout, but pacing also becomes much more. The differences in storytelling become much more exaggerated when you get to in terms of how a Japanese mangaka might tell a similar story compared to a Western creator, especially if you're looking at the superhero narrative, comparing something like Young Justice League to My Hero Academia. One thing that I find very interesting for having essentially almost the same concept is where they decide to load exposition. Right. I mean, both comics and manga are fans of the villain monologue. Really, if you're into nerdy stuff, you should be a fan of a villain monologue. It's just par for the course. If you've ever played a Final Fantasy, if you've ever played a Call of Duty, if you've ever played it, yeah. If you read a comic or read a manga, there's a villain monologue at some point, and you have to love it.
See, I'm trying to. I've never watched My Hero or read My Hero Academia. I'm trying to compare two things. So I would think of Peter Parker and Naruto as like similar
idea.
How they would tell the story differently.
Yeah,
but You're right, because death of a mentor. I mean, I'm trying to.
But I mean, if you're looking at where some of these moments of exposition might happen, looking at something like, let me see if I can pull something up here.
By the way, it was the thing I was thinking of was another Silverliner that we have, John Metich. I'm probably not pronouncing it. The third. He was talking on his pod on one of our streams, and he mentioned the same thing. You know, that his very first work was in Manga Newswatch.
Nice.
And mine, I don't remember if Zillion was first or Mega Newswatch was first. I think Mega Newswatch was first. So we had that in common. So that's why I had brought it up related to, that's why I had it on my desk, because we were talking about it for there.
Sure.
So if you want another source, I'm sure that you can talk to him on that.
Perfect.
I am so horrible with pronouncing people's names, by the way.
Sure. I guess the point I'm going on with this is roundtabling. It is a trope if you work in any sort of team comic or anything like that, or anything where there's a support staff. At some point, you're going to have Batman, Oracle, and Nightwing around a table, going over the notes scouted so far and acting about what's strange, what's new, what's going forward.
Okay.
Yeah. Whereas something, I don't know if I can do this legally, but we're here.
Okay.
Whereas also, if you, it's something interesting, if you go through and read manga on Comixology, it does read right to left, which is interesting. So it tracks progress the other way as well. But you're going to have moments where you're going to have this thing like acting about, like having the discussion moments, how they're discussing the nature of this conflict, talking about how people have been acting with it in the middle of their interaction with these characters, which can seem, a little exposition dumpy or a little monologue-y, but you don't really have one character monologuing the entire time. You're breaking up the exposition between 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 characters. But essentially, for some people, I think it's going to be a matter of taste. Some people like having their own table and their actions separate, and still having the occasional clip back and forth. Like Spider-Man's going to discover something about Norman Osborn in the middle of the fight, but it's not going to be this huge hole to do. But whereas in the manga, you might your protagonist is going to find out that the antagonist is their father and their uncle at the same time in the middle of this finishing move.
Right.
Yeah. And so for some people that can be hit or miss, but I think for people who like it, it's interesting because it keeps the exposition in a point where there's still visual interest. Where if a story has a lot of monologuing and to do and a lot of things it needs to get across to you, doing that in a moment where there is also someone getting kame'd at the same time can do a lot to break up that stagnation.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I'm trying to think in an American comic, in a Western comic. Do we typically, like in a manga or an anime, we kind of relegate a sidekick to a subordinate, like a less powerful character. But when I think of all the, at least shonen-based kind of anime, man, you get these super powerful characters that are like dumping exposition as opposed to like this inquisitive, I don't want to say stupid person, but this like naive person trying to bait exposition out. It's kind of like, no, these super intelligent people are kind of breaking down what's going on. And that's like a typical thing.
Yeah.
Like, if you think of Demon Slayer, or yeah.
This is a hot take for me. This is gonna be a hot take. I don't know if I have any basis for this. Actually, no, I actually do have a lot of basis for this. Nightwing issue number 1, 1995, written by Tim Seeley. Tim Seeley, admitted manga anime fan.
Mm-hmm.
I hold the entire Bat family, the extended Bat family. That is all like the influence of manga coming through, saying like, no, your super team needs to be their own characters, do their own arcs, everything like that. I mean, Robin Hood is straight up an anime character, or Red Hood is straight up a anime character. Mm-hmm. Guy gets resurrected in a pit, comes back with 2 guns, and is just superpowered on the wazoo. Yeah. But yeah, the whole idea of you're having your side characters have their own arcs, right? While the protagonists off doing their own thing. I don't even know what my favorite anime is at this point. I usually say it's Bleach by default because it has been for so long.
Oh man! If I told you I never watched Bleach, I know that is a sin.
That is a whole thing.
That or One Piece. I can't do it.
I've watched some One Piece, but I cannot do the entire thing. I'm watching through it as the Netflix live adaptation because that they condensed it a ton.
Yeah. The pacing is probably a lot better in that.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I watched 1 episode and got through what was, I think, 30 some odd episodes of the anime originally, condensed onto 1 episode. Speaking of slower paced stories,
I just think of, I've actually gone through twice the Dragon Ball Z.
Oh yeah,
gosh,
that's
a lot of episodes.
Yeah, if I ever revisit Dragon Ball, we have to watch it as Dragon Ball Z Kai. Yeah.
Well, I will say something, and it kind of touches on our subject here. Is if you do watch it and you actually watch it from like the DVDs with the bonus materials.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of interesting things on the bonus materials with Christopher Sabat talking about how when they first got the stuff, how doing the translations, how there was nothing around at the time, so the experience of being kind of the first or early adopters of doing these American versions of the anime at the time. There's a lot of interesting things on the bonus materials.
So. Imagine, yeah. I had the one I have in DVD format is Trinity Blood. That's the main anime series that I've actually felt the need to go back and watch the commentary on.
Mm-hmm.
And I've kind of done something on how that's where he handled the idea of a vampire so much differently than how Western media handles the idea of a vampire, and how when you're doing the voices for that, how that influences the decisions we make.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea this is a vampire who's a member of the clergy.
Mm-hmm.
How do you combine the idea of being undead for over 1,000 years while also having essentially the traditional medieval church education, but in a post-apocalyptic setting, and this weird mix mash of things.
That reminds me of the Grendel arc, where the evil Kabuki vampire turns out to be was it Pelion Cross years later in the church, head of the church and stuff.
Yes.
It reminds me of that as well.
It's so weird because you have to give kudos to the storytelling. I feel like if I watched an anime or I don't read a lot of manga, but I feel like it would be the same way. They could write a story about the journey of toilet tissue in a toilet seat and have a person crying by the twist. I don't know how they do it very well though. Their method of storytelling and getting you to fall in love with the protagonist and the tease that I think about a lot of the anime. It has to be the same in the manga, where you fall in love with everybody else but the main character at first, and you're excited to see everyone else but the main character, and then it just flips. They do this somehow they plotted out the story so well that it flips, and now it's just like head and shoulders above everyone else, and you're in love with the protagonist and the villain. You're always in love with the villain.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah.
The villains are usually some of the best characters. Like,
Yeah.
except for Jujutsu Kaisen, Mahito, you can that man. He's taken so much. He's taken so much from us.
Oh, it's so funny. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, kind of. My opinion on this is that some of that pulls on the idea of where you're loading your exposition. Like the trope in Western comics is always the origin story, right? Issues 1 through 7, the heroes getting their powers, some member of their family is dying, and you're going through it and building out this origin. In manga and anime, rarely ever do you see the character's origin until like halfway through the series.
Yep.
Usually you start with them having like, they're not like full powered, but they are, at some point they have achieved some sort of power or some sort of competency, and they are dealing with some issue while explaining a little bit of where they're from, but you don't really get the full deal of it. But you're getting enough to like getting the power fantasy from the character, you're getting hyped for what they're doing, and usually getting just enough personality to try and draw you in. So when they do reveal the crushing backstory at some point and how it ties in with this other character, that's usually like, if done well, and a lot of manga and anime do it really well, you end up getting this really gut-wrenching volume 49 or whatever, where like you're like, oh, this character came from this and this is what happened, and this villain is directly responsible for all this. We're not dealing with so much front-loading exposition in an origin story, which can sometimes turn someone off before they even get past volume 1 on a comic.
You mean like Demon Slayer? You pretty much know where the origin is right off the the gate.
Yes. Yeah. Episode 1: family is dead. We're off to demon slaying school. Fantastic. We actually just started that, and we're sitting down on the couch, putting it on. Yeah. I know it's something that completely skipped me. I don't know how, but I just, I'm like, we need to watch this. It's been talked about for so much. So we sat down on the couch, we turned it on, and you get that first scene where the family's like, "All right, be safe out there," and we're sitting like, "They're all gonna die."
Gosh, I can't talk about it. I'm not even gonna.
That's fair. Okay.
Are you reading the? Are you reading the manga, or are you watching the anime?
We're watching it.
Okay.
Yeah. Putting that Crunchyroll subscription to work. But that's also another thing. It's like a cultural difference almost, but I feel like has influenced some of the things. But one of the notes I did have is on cultural differences. This was not necessarily one of them, but it's always worth talking about. Because of how much respect there is for the mangaka and their craft, there is like a cultish rule for spoilers in the anime and manga community that has actually come over from Japan. Comics are notorious for having the guy who, in the middle of the store, will push up his ass to say, actually, in Superman number 256.
Mm-hmm.
And will then proceed to spoil and ruin everything for you. And so I feel like that now, like particularly with like, we saw the conversation happen online in real time with the MCU. People wanting to spoil stuff and talk about the comics, but then people going like, no, 2 weeks spoiler warning. Like you have 2 weeks after that you can talk about it. And it was really interesting to see that argument pop up, especially knowing how much different genre fandoms handle their spoilers, but then with how much of a general zeitgeist knowing what the MCU was. Like if you lived in Western society, you watched an MCU movie.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially they're creating a new rule regarding spoilers. It's a little more in line with how the manga community handles spoilers than how the comic book community has traditionally handled spoilers.
Well, that's a big thing right now with, wasn't it Ryan Reynolds was trying to get people to stop spoiling tidbits on Deadpool 3?
Yeah. Yeah, there's been so many leaks coming out of it that he's been trying to actively fight people. Yeah. I also saw that someone hacked the studio that's developing the Wolverine game and is willing to leak everything unless they pay them $2 million.
I mean, gosh.
Yeah. I doubt they're going to get far with it, but that's a weird, take a good take. Okay. Okay. Last note I have, and I don't see anything else on anyone else's notes that I've taken. Who is this? Here it is. The other note I have is Anton Mario from Tim Webb says Astro Boys in the street. But one of the last notes I have is cultural themes and the diversity of genres explored in comic books, and also the diversity of storytelling. I mean, comics, of course, have been no stranger to diverse storytelling. Like for a while there, it was weird to write a superhero comic if you like romance comics were selling in I think the 50s and 60s. I can't remember the exact timeline on that, but it had a moment where like you had to be writing a romance comic, and then you had to be writing a slice life, and then superheroes came back into zeitgeist. But nonetheless, comic books have always had the trappings or the perception of spandex and capes, at least generally. Whereas you don't really see that with manga. Like you have your Naruto and your Bleaches and your Dragon Balls. Even within the community, they're known as shonen manga or shonen anime. They're not. That isn't just like a term for anime. But the fact that they're treated specifically as the subgenre. So whenever someone thinks of anime, they're probably gonna have a completely different thought. Like when you first mention anime to someone, their first thought might be Tokyo Ghoul, not Dragon Ball or whatever.
Or Blalock, right? Or some
Blalock. Oh my god, Blalock.
Yeah, some like.
Blalock is fantastic. If you want an anime that teaches you absolutely like how soccer is not played, but it captures the emotional impact of soccer, that is Blalock.
Oh my god, that's funny.
And I feel like this is coming. Also going back to creator and stuff. I feel like with the rise of webcomics, and particularly, you see such a strong impact of manga culture on Western creators, telling such a wide range of stories through the comic book medium in a way that they own it entirely, in a way that they handle literally every aspect of it in a way that a mangaka might. Where like if you're Tite Kubo, you handle everything and then you just hand it to Shonen and like, all right, get it out to people. Whereas, you know, if you're gonna blanking on names for webcomic sites, webtoons, stuff like that, you're gonna see a lot of things that like are very like even visually like a lot of the character design is gonna be very like influenced by manga, but Western creators and you know, it might be something that is entirely slice of life. And even now, you're seeing like the Visions, right? Marvel comic that was slice of life with Vision, which is a really weird character for that to be a slice of life, but that's kind of why it works. But Image also has been very open about how like manga's influenced them. Same with Valiant and Jurgens. I mean, Ninjak, right? No, probably a very blatant example of that. But the way of exploring these different elements of theming, spending more time on not just like the cool aspects of other cultures as well in some of these stories. Like we've always had ninjas and samurais because those are the cool parts of Japanese culture and Western storytelling. But manga and anime spend if they're going to like a Mongolian-based culture or like German-based culture, they're going to spend a lot of time also talking about the prayer style. Like it's very weird to have like the German nun is a common trope in anime, which is interesting. But I found also that now when some American comics have samurai or Japanese influenced characters, they also spend time to talk about like prayer beads or like oni and like the mythology regarding that culture, not just the fact that ninjas are cool. I kind of went on a weird round, but talking about like hitting like such a wide range of genres, and then also when you're going into those genres, getting very exploratory within the theming of that, right? Spending a lot of time almost with that slower pacing to weave in exposition throughout the story.
Mm-hmm.
And you're seeing a lot on things like webtoons or creator-owned platforms. I've said the same thing like 3 times. So open for you guys. Like, what are your thoughts on all that are?
I mean, I think it's interesting. I mean, I can't, both are so big. I can't say that I have a big enough sample size of either to say that I know this as a fact. But when you look at how like a manga or an anime approaches like even Western type cultures, like, I mean, I've never really watched My Hero Academia, but I'm from Detroit, and so to know that like a character has a move, I guess, that is like the Detroit whatever.
Detroit Smash. All Might, who is a character who's canonically American, now living in Japan, so all of his moves are based off of what states he's lived in. Yeah.
Right. That's so weird. That's like a weird, like, or even like you look at like a Fate, any kind of Fate series, like, and how they are taking
State 57.
Yeah, gods from like every culture really, and just kind of spinning it into a series that completely makes sense in anime or manga speak, once you're into it. But I don't really, I know that this exists in comics, but it just doesn't feel as prevalent, maybe at least, in the sample size that I have. I mean, I suppose that there are probably a ton of comics out there that do kind of explore different cultures and kind of make it native to their own in some way in them. But I like the way that is handled in an anime or a manga.
Yeah. Kind of ways I've thought about it. Nope, lost it. All right, let's go. I had a thought and it escaped.
Or even again, like I know I brought this up earlier, but like they'll take something so simple like cooking.
Oh yeah.
or like or Blalock, like soccer, and they'll make this whole. You're like, how do you even turn this into this? You know what I mean? I guess I'm not as shocked when I see Western stories. Like Western stories draw me for different reasons than like the kind of weird shock value of a anime or a manga. And I say shock, it's really not shocking. It's kind of absurd at first, and then you watch it for another 15 minutes and you're like, oh, this completely makes sense. I get how they're weaving this in about a breadstick being like a knight in like some kingdom. I don't know. I made up something weird, but that's how absurd some of the storylines are that kind of pull you in. And again, it's just kind of like a weird basis to tell a story that I think is more common in anime and manga than it is in Western comics. We kind of base it on some, at least, grounding of, I don't want to say reality, but relatability is different. I don't know. We approach relatability in almost like a physical, tangible thing.
Right.
And the story is more relatable. I don't know, more relatable in a manga. It's not necessarily the physical, tangible thing. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like kind of things that make things relatable. We have Hawkeye, who is a deaf character, which in some cases it's brought up, especially when you're dealing with characters like Echo or whatever. But it doesn't necessarily get, in your average issue, it may not be mentioned at all. You may not even be illustrated with a hearing aid in. But for some readers, knowing that Hawkeye is deaf, if they're deaf themselves, like kind of cool because then they can see themselves in the character, right? Let me get this character's name because it's been a while since I saw it. What is his name? Is it Miles? But then when you look at something like oh my gosh, I'm trying to find the character's name. Here we go. When the anime Gangsta, spelled Gansta, but one of the main protagonists, Nicholas, is deaf, and it is something that gets brought up early and often because his partner, Warwick, has to communicate with him in sign language or lip reading. And that's something that's brought up with other characters because everyone's always asking about like why they're signing in the middle of a fight or whatever. This guy who's running out with the katana can't hear the people sneaking up behind him. And then, so wait for his guy who is has blind in one eye, has to wait for him to point out something. But great anime, actually. Go watch it. But I thought it was like one of the first things I noticed is how well they handled the character being deaf and how much they point out, like, he's still a badass. Like, he's doing, like, these incredible feats. He's definitely very much a protagonist. But, you have a character who's making healthy and thought-out accommodations for him. And they comparing that to, like, how Hawkeye, if he is deaf or isn't deaf, like, most of the time it feels like he isn't deaf at all. Whereas, with Nicholas and Gangster, it's always that's something that like listens to your mind. So if someone is watching that or reading that and is deaf themselves, I feel like they're gonna have a lot more day-to-day relatable experiences in that story because they're having exact interactions like hyped up to 11 that they're similar reactions to what they've had in their life. Okay.
I'm gonna have to look at that.
Oh yeah, I mean, is it in here?
Gangsta?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not on Unlimited, but I believe it should be. If you want to watch it, it's on Crunchyroll, and you should be able to buy the issues of the manga if you want to read it fairly easy. But yeah. Let's do this. That's all the notes that I have had. So I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts or ideas or things they wanted to explore in our last bit here.
I do have one question. Have you researched the speed, since it's all in black and white, the speed of manga production versus the speed of like the standard kind of comic?
So that's the interesting thing, but because depending on how your manga is, no, this wasn't that I had. I didn't write down though. The business side of things on publication schedule and publication size. Some manga goes through on a periodical release, or like once a quarter, you might get a chapter that's 10 to 20 pages in part of a larger magazine if they're part of a network like that. It's like your Shonen Jumps or whatever. Like you're gonna end up getting a periodical every month. It's like a couple, essentially, it'd be one chapter of Bleach or Naruto or One Piece or whatever. However, the general publication is you get volumes, which is going to be your 200 or so pages of collected chapters that gets released every now and then. So, which is much larger than even our trade paperbacks, like triply so. And so your manga ones are going to come out at a much slower pace. I think a lot of them come out, and also a lot of them, because they're mangaka owned, it comes out at the pace of the mangaka. So some people have been like waiting forever for like a new volume to drop on something. There are some people who are able to create about 400 pages and do that and release a volume like every quarter or so. Other people like do like 2 volumes a year or do 1 volume a year. And some publishers will have like requested schedules for the mangaka. Like if you're working with us, like you need me these photos, like it's out. It's your property, but if you don't get this out, then you're handling it on your own. But it is one of those things where like the production schedule can vary so much. It's much more similar to how we work at Silverline versus like how Marvel and DC work. But that being said, because there's no color, if someone is like in like in a very productive phase, you're probably going to end up getting 400 pages worth of manga, where like the U.S. audience would get 140 pages. Yeah. So this is kind of another weird thing. Why it's like that is one aspect that is so different, but I don't know if that would ever fully impact our like the Western way of doing comics, because we've been on the structured 1 floppy a month for so long. But that being said, I feel like we kind of are seeing it with studios like TKO, which TKO says like you don't publish a book until you have everything done and collected into trades. So they release it as a 3-box set or 3-book set. You just get 3 full books, or however many it is.
I also like to bring up that a lot of the anime and manga influence with some of the artists and some of the projects from like artists. Again, apologize if I'm brutalizing the name, but Joe Magera.
Oh yeah.
You can heavily see the influence of manga on him, on his work and stuff. So that I think had brought a lot of fresh, unique direction with him, with his stuff. I love his stuff. And then from project wise, I like what DC is doing a lot with like the Batman stuff. The Batman Samurai. The very stylized, like the very stylized Joker. And then you also have like the Star Wars Vision stuff that is you have the anime style, but then you also have the comic that they just dropped a couple weeks ago based off of it. And also with a lot of the High Republic stuff that I've been following with Star Wars, there are some manga versions of that. I've seen manga versions of The Mandalorian. So you see that going across the different cultures. It's culture systems, not Japanese culture, but like the Star Wars culture, the Batman culture, stuff like that is more of what I was referring to. Sure. But a lot of that influence brings kind of a new dimension and a new way of thinking on that. And then like for me, a lot of the stuff that I really liked was I liked a lot of the stuff that was kind of deeply rooted in traditional Japanese settings. Like I loved Ninja Scroll, things like that.
Yes.
So and then some of the fun ones too, like Cowboy Bebop, things like that. So there's some really cool stuff to give a whole new dimension to things. Not even touching things like Akira and those type of things. But one of the books I was thinking about was a book. It was like 22, 23 issues. It was a book called Xenon. It was a Viz book. We all know Viz produced a lot of anime adaptations and manga stuff. So there's another one that I just ran across probably about a month ago when I was sorting through some stuff. But yeah, some cool things.
Okay. Well, this has been the That's Our Show on Tuesday, talking about the influence of manga on Western comics. Let me get our calendar pulled up for next week here. Next week, we are going to be talking about your essential skills for Comic-Cons. So, yeah. But for boothing, attending, cosplaying now, anything, everything, whatever your influence or position at Comic-Con is, what are your skills you're going to need to have to either make sales, navigate lines, or make sure you don't swelter to death under layers of makeup and prosthetics.
Okay.
But we'll be back next week. Make sure to check out Wednesday Wham and Silver Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern on those respective days. Head on over to silverlinecomics.com. Pick on up some of our comics or merch, or sign up for a newsletter. We'd love to have you there. And of course, we are all comics creators. That is what we do while we're here. So we would love your support that way as well. Like I said, we'll be back next week going over skills you'll need for Comic-Con, however you choose to attend.
And we also have, they just did a close. I think all the pre-orders for the diamond orders for Trumps, I think that just closed. The comic shops are submitting orders, but I believe the next one is Kalis. Number one is supposed to be in the next Diamonds previews, so keep an eye out for that too.
Very cool.
Silverline is definitely branching out in a whole bunch of different areas. So
definitely. Okay. So, we're excited to see. We're going through what you guys will can expect from us. And Wolf Hunter number 2 is almost through illustration, so hopefully I have some panels for that soon to share. And we also have another Super Siege book that I've been working on for a while that is in the middle of all that, so hopefully I have panels for that as well.
Nice.
Okay. Have nothing else, then we will see you all next week. And until that time,
8 Minds
Silverline.
8 Minds Silverline.
My name is Ross Ritchie from Boom Studios, and make mine Silverline.